So we're going to now have a look at two different formulas that are quite similar actually, Countifs and Sumifs. We're going to start off with Countifs. So the idea here is that we want to count the number of occurrences in a list of a certain object or a certain text. So we can see here we've got this list of different fruits, and if we wanted to know how many apples were in this list, for example, obviously we could count them quite easily when it's a small list, but if there are 1,000 items in this list, then a formula to help us would be quite effective. So we can see that we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 apples are in this list. So let's see how we would write a formula to count those. So the formula we're going to use is the Countifs formula. So I'm going to type in Countifs. I'm going to use my arrow keys to come down here, and I'm going to use tab to auto select. The bonus of using that is it also puts the left bracket in for me. So there's two parts to this formula. The first is the criteria range. So whenever we see the word range, so I'm looking at this little blue helper icon that's appeared at the bottom here. Whenever I see the word range, I know that that means a selection. That means more than one thing, not an individual click. It's going to probably be a drag or a selection. So I'm going to just select all my fruits. Okay, so all my fruits are between B2 and B11. And then I'm going to move on to the next part of the next argument in the formula. So I'm going to do a comma. And then it's now what's turned blue is criteria 1. Okay, and I'm going to say that my criteria is going to be apples. Now I can't just write apples like this because apples isn't a keyword that Excel knows about. So any sort of English or any text that you're typing in needs to be written inside of quotation marks. So I'll just put those in like that. I'll put my closure brackets in just to make it look pretty. So we're saying count if you see the word apples between B2 and B11. That's how we could sort of rearrange that in our brains. So hopefully when I press enter, this will say 4, and it does. Okay. A couple of things about this. It's actually case insensitive. So if this was a lowercase a, and I press enter, it still works. But it must, apart from the case, it must match exactly the text. Okay, so if, for example, I add a space after this word apples, so that is now apples space, and I press enter, that's going to change to 3 because it doesn't match anymore. Okay, the characters are slightly different. Okay, so that's and there are different functions that you can use to help with that. There's something called trim, which can remove white space. So if you do encounter that, you can maybe look at that. Okay, so that's Countifs, and where that's going to be used is on this spreadsheet. Okay, so this is sort of the homework or what you're doing, what you did in class, and it's for specifically this section here that I've highlighted. I'm just going to make it a different color just to make it stand out. I'll just make it like an orange or something like that. So this section that I've just turned orange, these are solved by using Countifs. So what you want to know is the total number of sales for Carmen. So really that's a Countifs on this column here, and you want to know how many times the word Carmen appears in that list. That's what you've got to write a formula to try and solve. All of the rest of them are Sumifs, which we're about to look at now. Okay, so there's one, because Countifs is quite simple really, there's only two parts to it. A range of where to count and what specifically you want to count. Okay, so let's look at Sumifs. Okay, so here we go, here's Sumifs. So the idea behind Sumifs is it's a similar process. It's going to be focusing on predominantly on this column for a criteria. But what we might want to do is we might want to find something, and then there's a cost associated with it, and it might be good if we could sum up all of the costs of the apples. So it could find apples. I mean, in this instance, all of the apples actually cost the same amount of money. So let's actually just change this one to say £4. So look, we've got a £3, a £4, so that's 7, another 3, that's 10, and another 3, that's 13. Okay? So how do we write a formula that will go through this list? Every time it finds apples, it will come over here and grab the price of the apples and then add them all up for us. So let's see how we would do that. So we would write a Sumifs, okay? And now the difference between the Sumifs and the Countifs is predominantly the first argument. And the first argument in this case is again a range, but again the difference is this is the range of the numbers that are going to be added up. Okay, so the numbers we're going to sum. So in this case, the numbers we're adding up are here. Okay, so that's the start. So we select the numbers we're going to add up. Then I'm going to do a comma to move on to the next argument. And now it's basically the same as Countifs, and this is why we teach them together. So now it's the same as Countifs. So now the next thing it's asking me for is the criteria range. So we're familiar with that. The criteria range is all of the possible fruits here, comma, and then again I could type in apples. I'm just going to show you another way. So this will work. In fact, I'll press enter here and then I'll just amend it in a second. So look, we get 13. It's not showing us £13 because the format of this cell is just set to be general, but I could certainly change this to say currency, something like that. Okay. Now the other way you can use this, and this is the same for both Countifs and Sumifs, is you don't have to put these things in quotation marks or bunny ears. The other thing you can do is if a cell contains the word you're looking for, you can just click on it and say count that thing. So for example, I could say, instead of writing apples in quotation marks, I could click on here on cell B2 because B2 contains the thing we want to count. So I'm going to press enter and we still get 13. And you can see I can just change this. If we want, I can delete the word apples here. Let's count something else. Let's count pears, for example. I'm going to click on the word pears. It types in B6 in the box. I press enter. It says 2. Let's have a look. 1, 2. Okay. So that's working perfectly well. So let's go back over here to our practice. Okay, so all of the rest of these are all going to be using the Sumifs. Okay, and there's one more thing I need. So for example, this is the total sales. So Carmen's total sales. So let's have a little look. I'll give you a hint on how you would solve this. I won't do it for you, but I'll give you a hint. So what you want to do is you want to find out, you want to sum up Carmen's sales. So here are the amounts of sales that Carmen, or all of the salespeople have made. So this is probably going to be the first criteria. Okay, and then we've got all of the salespeople, and then we've got Carmen. So that's sort of talking around it without giving you the actual answer. Now, notice that we've got so this is the level 2. This is the minimum that we need to do for the course. Okay, and there's some other ones here for fun. Okay, but they are quite engaging, and some of them, particularly this one, will I wouldn't say sleepless nights, but you'll certainly be thinking about how you solve that problem. Okay, but in order to do these other ones, there's one extra thing we need to know. So I'm going to go back to my example, and the one extra thing we need to know is this. So the reason that this is called Countifs, and I want to emphasize the S on the end, and Sumifs, again with an S on the end. There is a version of both of these formulas without the S, okay? But it's not as good, and I think it was just kept in for compatibility reasons. So we're always using the one with the S. So what does the S do? Okay, so I will explain. So I'll do a Sumifs again, and let's imagine that again we wanted to sum up the costs of the apples, but we also care about apples from a specific year. Okay, so we want to sum up the cost of apples, so we already know that all of the apples added together comes to £13. Well, what if we just wanted to add up the apples from 2012? Okay, so if we just wanted to add up the apples from 2012, how would we go about doing that? So that's what the S is for, because we can have multiple criteria. Okay, so let's see. So we've got some ifs here. Oops. I forgot to put an S on the end. And equals at the start. So let's have a look. So I'm going to say equals Sumifs. I'm going to write it in this box to make it easy to see. And again, the first argument is the same. Here are all the numbers I want you to add up, comma. The second argument is going to be the same. Here are all of the different types of fruits, comma, and the fruit we're interested in. I'll just click. In fact, I might type it just to make it's slightly more readable when you actually see it written. It's slightly quicker to just type it. So remember, always be kind to future you that's going to look at these formulas and try and understand them. The easier you can make them to understand in the future, the kinder you'll be. Now notice here, in this little helper box, so we know at the moment that I can press enter on here and I get 30, that's the £13, okay? If I come into my formula, you'll notice that there are some square brackets, okay, in the little helper thing, and it says, inside those square brackets, it says criteria range 2, comma, criteria 2. Now the square brackets, first thing you need to know is that you'd never type the square brackets. What square brackets mean is that this is optional, okay? And so this is an optional step because obviously it works as it is. But what it does mean is because inside of the square brackets there are 2 arguments, it's saying if you go ahead, you've got to give me 2 more bits of information. You've got to give me another range and another specific criteria. Okay, so let's have a look. So I'm going to put the comma in. I'm going to say, okay, well, here's another range. Okay, so I'm also telling it I'm interested in all the years. And the specific year that I'm interested in, again, I could do this in a number of ways. I could click on, say I wanted 2012. Or, because Excel is good with numbers, I can just type in the number like that. Okay, and that will actually work. So let's see. So this should give us 6. Okay, again I'll format it as currency. Let's see what it's done there. So I said the criteria was Apple, so it found this one. I also said the criteria was 2012, so it sort of remembered £3. Came down, it found another apples, but this one was 2013, so it ignored that. It came down, it found another apples, this was 2014, it ignored that. It came down again, it found another apples. Again, this was 2012, so that was a tick. So then it added this 3 to this 3 to give us £6. And I don't know if there is a limit to how many of these that you can do, but you can do a lot. Okay, you can do a lot. Now, there's one more thing that I need to do. I'm just going to bring it up on the screen now. Here it is. So now you know in theory how to do this one. This one's going to be the same. So now we're looking for the total sales for Carmen. Okay, so a formula similar to this, but then you're going to go ahead and only find the ones in the East region. So you're going to use a different column. And then the only other thing you maybe need to know is, well, how do you do dates? Okay, how do you do dates? So the nice thing about dates is you can say before or after. Okay, and the way you do this is you do it as follows. So let's say I wanted to find, I don't want to give you the exact, let's say I wanted to say everything before May 2020, for example. So this is how you would do it. This is how you would write your argument. You would put it in quotation marks. Then you would either use a less than or a greater than, depending on whether you want to say before or after. So I'm going to say before. And then let's say I wanted to say the 1st of May 2021. Okay. And then I close the quotes. So that's my criteria for a date. Okay. So I would have selected, as my range, I would have selected all of my dates, and then comma my criteria. In this instance, if I wanted everything before the 1st of May 2021, I would write it like that. Okay, notice there's no spaces between the less than sign and the date. Okay, and then using that technique there is how you answer this question. So notice here the level 2 ones, this is 1 criteria, these are 2 criterias, or 2 ranges, 2 criterias, and these both are 3 ranges and 3 criterias. But really, once you crack this one, you can probably quite easily do this, and then this one maybe just takes a little more thinking about. How can you combine together? I'll give you a clue. It's sort of a combination of this formula and this formula that will enable you to do the total sales in 2013. Okay, I hope that's useful, and if you're stuck at any point, please get in contact with us and we'll help in any way we can. Thanks ever so much.